Muters. Hello everyone, welcome to the live stream. Before we start, can you just let us know how the audio sounds, whether I sound okay and whether Joyce sounds okay?
Hello, can you hear me?
If the volume needs adjusting, just let us know in chat before we start. We've not had any audio issues yet so far. Everyone said it sounds good every time, so Mick has already responded saying the audio sounds fine. Joyce is a bit low though. Yeah, I might just... You don't need to change your audio.
Oh, I'm not doing anything. Okay.
Yep, I'll control it on Discord. Okay. How about now? Say something. Something. Does that something sound okay?
Better?
Yeah, I mean, 3 people have said
low?
It's just a bit low. There is a slight delay.
My mic is right here. I can just bring it a little bit closer.
Yeah, I think
now I'm talking directly into the mic. Is that better? People are saying it's still a bit low.
It's probably okay now you've moved it. There is a little bit of a delay, so we'll just wait for that to catch up.
Crank it up. Still a bit low.
No. Someone said it's nice now. Okay, everyone's saying it's better. Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay, sure. I think the chat I'm looking at is delayed a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It should be fine. Okay, so welcome to the first Q&A live stream of the year. We're trying to do these every week, hopefully all the way up until the end of the year, if I can find enough people each week. And today we have Joyce, MinionsArt, or however you like to be referred to as. Do you want to tell people what it is you do or who you are?
I'm Joyce. Yeah, I guess most people know me as MinionsArt. I make tutorials on shaders and sometimes 3D, everything based around Unity because that's all I know. And I'm also making a game, I should mention it. I'm also making a game called Astrocat, which is basically Zelda with an astronaut cat. I think that's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have probably seen your stuff on Twitter. I think that's where I first saw your stuff because either that or I'm really bad with shaders and anything visual. So I looked it all up, and you're one of probably the most popular people when it comes to that kind of thing for making cool visual effects. And then you probably get a lot of people that know nothing about shaders begging you to teach them how to do all this magic. You know, I see a lot of
sorry.
Yeah, no, go on.
The most common question is, how do I get started with all of this?
Yeah.
And then there's always one article I link, which is a post on Patreon I made called the non-scary shader intro, because shaders look very scary. I mean, by now you have Shader Graph, which makes it a bit easier for beginners, but when it comes to code shaders, you get a block of code, and it can be really intimidating just to figure out what's going on. So if anyone here wants to try out code shaders, can I just link it in chat?
Sure. I don't know if people are allowed to post links. I think YouTube might just block it, but just send me the link. Yeah, just hand it to Mick and he'll post it.
It's all free. I know it says Patreon, and Patreon is often paid, but all of the stuff I do is free, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, you said about the most frequent question you get is how to get started. Yeah, I can see that because I'm in the position of someone who doesn't really know about shaders. I've done my little bits of research and playing around, so I know a bit of the terminology and how to do the most basic things, but I've never delved further than that, and I keep telling myself I'm gonna try and learn more about shaders, and I never do. But I think because it's now January, it's a new year, I think that's a good excuse to try and look into it as a New Year's goal.
New Year's resolution to start learning shaders.
Yeah, I had I don't have an actual list, but I had a mental list of a few things I want to try looking into that I don't know right now. Shaders is one of them. And honestly, what else was there? I think animation and looking into the animation rigging and inverse kinematics and all that stuff. That sounds quite interesting, but I'm not really into it that much. I've made one video on inverse kinematics using the Unity package, and it was something really simple. It's you have your player animation, but then when someone walks by, the head kind of looks at you in a semi-natural way, and about constraints and stuff. But it's something really basic. I need to do a lot more about it.
I really need to look into that too.
Yeah,
I need a lot of IK in my game.
that's a thing, because
I've set up for like hands and legs and looking at stuff, but the one thing I was missing is generic IK. So if you have something that isn't a humanoid.
Yeah.
And I think, as far as I know, that these new packages also allow that to work with generic IK.
Yeah, I think that is something about it, but like I've seen a few of the cool things Andre from Mix and Jam have done with the package, and that's the thing that's you know, there's no coding involved with that, or very minimal. They do most of the heavy lifting for you. It's all about just controlling weights, which you can do like in animation as well, because it's not a case of you just chuck on these components and then everything's all working. You might want to tweak the weights and do it a bit more dynamically, but the stuff you can do, which you can already do anyway, but with a lot of boilerplate code just to do the mathematics behind it all, it's nice that it's now just there, but still requires you to learn it all. And as I'm imagining, are you doing the game all solo, like completely?
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to learn everything.
Forever.
You have to learn everything. It's good though, because like you do learn everything, and you know, assuming you're happy to learn all these various things that aren't your expertise, but
I'm happy to learn it. There was actually I saw a few Twitter threads about oh, this is going very deep. Twitter threads about a Reddit post on r/GameDev that was made like a few days ago, where someone said, go against the beginner advice, start with a really ambitious big project. And as someone who is doing that, well, I guess it's not really a first project for me. I have done a bunch of other game dev stuff before, but it's gonna take forever, and you gotta be okay with that.
Yeah, I think if you're...
I don't know, did you see that the post on Reddit, or are you not?
I do look on the Reddit, but like I haven't been looking at it a lot recently, so I haven't seen this particular post, basically.
Okay, I don't know if I'm opening a can of worms here.
Well, that's the thing, because in my experience, like I took a few, watched some tutorials, took a few courses at the start, got the basics down to know what a component is and how to get component and call methods, like the Unity way and how it all works. And then you are told, don't think big at the start, make like lots of small projects, which I think that is true for the huge majority of people, but like you say, the benefit to making one huge game right away is that you learn everything, and you may not have like the downside is you don't have a finished product for a very long time, but at the same time you learn so much stuff because you're doing everything in the game. I mean,
I guess what I want to say is, if you're going to make one really big project, don't stick to it the entire time. Branch off and make smaller projects, and you'll learn more from that. I think that's what I want to say.
Yeah, because there's certain things. Sorry,
go ahead.
There's certain things that you only get to when you're at the end of development, and that can be stuff like deploying. Like how do I actually get my game out there? Which if you just work on one big game forever, it might be years before you ever get to that stage. Whereas if you make a few small games, you go through the full process. But maybe one of your games is a 2D platformer. By the time you finish that game, you'll never have messed with, I don't know, 3D physics or various other things, a lot of other things. But you could argue again, like most people do, that's better. Make a little 2D platformer, then make a different genre of game, then make a different genre game, but like think really small. So you go through the full process of each one. Yeah, they're both.
That's why jams are so nice to do.
Yeah, there's the jam coming up this weekend, and I'm
I
considering.
I'm too busy, but
is it online? Are they actually doing it online this year?
Are we talking about Global Game Jam?
Yeah.
That's next week, right?
Oh, next week. Yes, it's next week. I'm not. Don't panic. It's not this week. It's next week. Yeah. Is it online this year? I would imagine so.
I don't think they're allowed to do it in person.
Yeah.
Oh, also, I see the question.
Oh yeah.
It's been a while, so I really want to get to this. Joyce, would you say you're more of an artist or a programmer? How deep is your knowledge in coding? Um, I still think I'm more of an artist because all of my programming is sort of self-taught. So I don't think, like, yesterday I was streaming and I figured out how to use a tuple in chat, from chat, because I didn't really know how to use them. So as you can probably guess, there's a lot of really big gaps in my knowledge, but I'll get there in the end. You know, it's even though I didn't go to school for programming, I think I know enough to make a game, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that like you necessarily have to go to school to then say you're a programmer, because otherwise then I wouldn't be a programmer. I mean, I technically started at school, but like in high school or college, sixth form in the UK, which is like the ages of 16 to 18.
Okay.
I only did programming for those 2 years, and then instead of going off to university, I just was doing my own thing. And I don't know, I prefer being self-taught. And for example, with tuples, I don't know the actual pronunciation.
I have no idea.
We never used them in those 2 years at school. And at school we only did Python. But I came across them when looking at Python. So I figured it out myself or found it online. And then when I came to C#, I thought it would be the perfect solution for what I was doing. And then I realized at that time the C# version didn't have it as like a feature. It was like in one of the next features. Or like the next versions of C#. So it is a thing now, obviously, but back then it wasn't. And I don't see like anyone using them, because if you're ever needing to return multiple things from a function, like there are other ways to do it. It's not a necessary thing you need. It's just like a kind of nice way of writing it. Because you could just return a struct or a class with each thing in.
But sometimes you just want two extra things in there.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of nice.
It does save you from creating a new class, but I don't know what happens under the hood. Maybe when you compile it creates like a class for you to do that with, because that's what happens with like coroutines. Apparently whenever you use a coroutine, it makes a new class. You don't see it, but it exists. If you go look in the compiled code, there's a class to do it all, because I mean it's magic, right? Like yielding and waiting for frames and seconds and then continuing this, and like I know how to use it, but I'm ignorant to how it actually works. So it's like
that's me with shaders. To be honest, I know how to use them. I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
Also, I saw the question. Can you talk about? Oh, also, yes, I am Dutch, which is probably painfully obvious from my accent. Goedenavond. Also, can you talk about shader graph versus coding graphs? I'm assuming you mean shader graph versus coding shaders.
Yeah, I'm not sure what a coding graph is.
Because a coding graph would be visual script, and I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, maybe that is what they mean actually, like versus visual scripting. Because
sorry.
They do completely different things, so I don't know how you would compare them necessarily.
Okay, so it's yes, it is about coding shaders. Because when I started this whole shader nonsense, shader graph was not a thing, and I didn't have money to buy any of the graph solutions at the time. I just started with code, so that's what I'm used to. I make tutorials for shader graph, but to be honest, I find them really hard to read.
Someone's saying about custom nodes. I know you can make custom nodes from nodes, but can you also write your own custom nodes in shader code?
Yes. So I've done some freelancing work where people want me to work in shader graph, and there can be a lot of custom code involved. You just write an HLSL file.
Yeah.
And you can stick that into a custom node. You just gotta define the inputs and the outputs, and then you can do stuff with those in normal code. So in that case, you can do a lot with shader graph, but the downside is that you gotta use the custom nodes.
Yeah, when I started using shader graph, like for the first time, it was when it was just released, because I thought this is a good excuse to try and get into shaders now. I had looked at the code before, and I'd made some really simple, very simple shaders, but it was nice to understand, how it works with like fragment, shader, vertex stuff. It's been a while, so the memory's a bit hazy. But then I remember when I started it, they were missing so many features in shader graph, so you couldn't rename the variables. So then if you wanted to write a script that controlled the variables, you had to go in and like find the generated...
Yeah, like underscore vector 2 underscore bunch of numbers, that stuff.
Yeah. And then people have commented, like, even within the last week or months, saying, like, on my video from 2 years ago, or however long it was, telling me that, like, hey, by the way, you didn't tell us how to rename the thing. Yeah, because you couldn't back then. You couldn't do it.
Back then, you couldn't even use a vertex function. You couldn't even... Do you remember that? You couldn't even move the vertices around.
That's the thing. I thought, like, okay, I've made some, like, Fresnel effect where, like, oh, it glows on the edges. The thing everyone does because it's just there for you as a node. And then I was like, okay, what about, like, making a shader that actually updates the vertices? And I was Googling around and, oh, it doesn't exist yet. Okay. And then I also kind of got let down over time finding there was just so many things missing. And I was like... I know they're not missing in normal shader coding, so I just kind of gave up with shader graph. And then now I look at it and I'm like, oh, all those things are there now, to the point where you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can do pretty much anything with shader graph.
Close. There's still things missing. As far as I know, you still can't set up different z-test functions or lines, when... if you do z-test always, it'll render in front of everything. Something like that. And blend modes are also not exposed, I think. So those are two big ones. And there's no multipass.
I only know the first thing out of the three you mentioned there, but...
Okay, so blending modes is like... it's not exactly the same, but you could see it as like in Photoshop when you have a different blending mode. So something can be I can't pronounce this. Multiplied, I guess. Multiplicative.
Multiplicative.
Or, yes, that's the word. Or additive, and those are different blend modes. And as far as I know, you can't see those. They're not exposed in shader graph yet. I don't know if they're coming. But...
I was going to ask, like, all these things you've said are quite big things that are missing. By the sounds of it, they've not said they're going to add them yet. You're just hoping. Like, there's no roadmap or anything, is there, for shader graph? Maybe
there is.
I'm not sure. But... I
don't know. Maybe you can probably find it somewhere.
Yeah, you can just hope that they'll be added.
All sorts of things for Unity, so I'm gonna guess that there's something for shader graph as well.
If you're wanting to do something that requires what you've just said, do you just write that in code and then hook that in as custom nodes to make that all work?
I don't think you can do that, no.
So you just don't use shader graph at all for those kind of things, or you avoid those things altogether?
You can't do them. So, I mean, I try to convert what I can. So what happens is I'll write a shader in code, release it, and then if people people request it, or if I feel like it, I'll convert it to shader graph. I never start with shader graph.
Okay.
But if I can't do it, then, well, I mean, it stops, right? If I can't do it, I can't do it. I don't use shader graph for my own projects. It's just for tutorials.
Okay, is that because you like having more control over it? It's like with me, I don't like visual scripting that much, so I understand the kind of similarities there. But I guess one difference is, though, with visual scripting and visual shader graph, you get visual feedback when you're making it, so you get to see, like, at each node what the current output is, and it's the same in coding, kind of.
My screen, sorry. Oh.
I can still see it.
My screen went to sleep, sorry.
In visual scripting for coding, you get, like, at least on Bolt, there's some animation, so you can see, like, the code flow, which, you know, you can normally do that with debugging and going through the breakpoints, but it's nice to just have it running in real time rather than, you know, paused going through the breakpoints, and still seeing the code flow, like this goes here and that data's passed in there. And, you know, I guess for someone that's maybe more beginner, that's really helpful for the programming side. But yeah, so I guess the question was for shader graph, do you like having the visual outputs at each different point? Or
that's nice.
Yeah,
because that's really hard to do. When I need to output something in code, I just gotta take that value and set it to like the diffuse result, you know. But my problem is my brain doesn't like graphs. I don't know how else to say it. It's just I look at it and I'm like, okay, so this is like the order is reversed compared to how it's written. So my brain is like, what's going on here? It takes me a really long time to read them, so it's just not pleasant for me.
Yeah, I'm thinking like you have to keep tabbing in and out to look back at Unity every time you save, right? Or you put it on a separate monitor, so does it just update whenever you save with the shader?
Is this for code shaders?
Yeah, when you're coding it. I remember the compiling
I have
being
monitors, so I can. I mean, code shaders compile really quickly.
Yeah.
I don't. If I'm compiling normal code, my project freaks out because I didn't set it up for that. You know, if you're in play mode, I mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't like the recompile during play mode.
Have you not turned that off?
Shaders. No, I mean I could turn it on. I've turned it on that it continues, but like rewired will flip out, so I'd lose my input.
Yeah, okay.
You know, the third-party package rewired.
Yeah,
I don't know if they updated that at some point, but I just can't continue because I literally lose my input. And for shader code, it just compiles and there's no gameplay code attached to it, so it's fine.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the things that surprised me is how fast it is. But then I thought about it, like with C# code, there's a lot more logic under the hood and how it all is compiled. Like, I'm not going to pretend like I know what actually happens under the hood, but it makes sense to me why the shader stuff is a lot faster. But yeah, I think it's one of the hardest things to get into is just finding good resources, because I know they're out there, but and this is more for the programming side rather than the shader graph side, because yeah, I don't know, I've just struggled every time I've tried to get into it, and I've given up, and I've come back at some other point and I've given up again. So I don't know what I need to push myself to actually sticking with it and making something cool. But I've always had these questions that I think I've asked you maybe one of these before, but it's like you'll make a shader for something, like let's say you want some effect in your game, like when you look at an interactable item, it has some kind of glow around it or something. I know there's other methods, like you could use a particle system to just do something like that, but let's say you want the item you're looking at to have some kind of outline whilst you're like looking at it. So this shader, would you make a shader? It's the thing I don't get, because you might have one item that's like a book, and then you might have some other item that maybe it's like an NPC that has a much more complex shader, but they both need to have an outline when you look at them. Like, how does that all work together?
I think for so I haven't actually done that kind of outline myself, but I think you can just use a what's it called, image based effect over that, so it's over the camera.
Okay, so it's like a post-processing effect almost.
Yeah, I think so. I have not done that effect, which is probably something I should put on my list for a future tutorial.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, how do you choose when to make a new shader? Like, if you've got a character and then you've got like 10 other characters, maybe you'll decide like, oh, these 3 can share the same shader, but this one actually needs maybe the same but like something extra. Do you just give them all that same shader with more than what you need? But maybe you turn like this,
like making an Uber shader.
Yeah, I've heard you use that term before, just like an Uber shader that does everything. But then is that what the project usually looks like, just a few of those for like various different things? Or
yeah, so I have one for terrain, I have one for characters that has like some built-in when you get hit, it'll have like a rim light around it. That's in all of them. and when something dies, there's like a dissolve effect. So that's just my characters all share a shader.
Yeah. What if you wanted to give something else the same dissolve effect? Like, the way I'm trying to say this is, if I was coding and I'm, there's the whole component-based design, and maybe this other object wants this behavior, I'll just stick that component on it because I've already written it before. But with shaders, it doesn't really work like that. You can't just stick a bit on something to like
you could
build up a shader, or
you could if you have something that you're using a lot and you really want to have separate shaders, you can just make a CG include file and have the calculations in there, and then you can just call it. So sort of like a separate thing that other shaders call towards, if that makes sense.
What, like a shader that uses other shaders? Like you include...
It's just like a piece of code called a CG inc file, where you can put a bit of code in, and then other shaders can call that. That's how, if you... it's like where all the common variables are stored. So if you have a shader and it uses... I'd say something stupid now because I don't know this much about all of the in-depth stuff. If you call like text 2D to project a texture onto a UV, I think, as far as I know, that text 2D is defined somewhere, right? And you can write your own versions of that so that other shaders can call.
Yeah, it's like
I'm so bad at explaining.
It's like having a static class of like extension methods almost.
Yes.
That kind of that kind of idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like, with like normal Unity components, you've written it, you've got it like once in your project, this component that does something, and then you decide, okay, I'm making this new thing, it's an enemy, it's a building, it's something, and you just keep adding on components, like you'd add on your renderer and your collider and then your health script and whatever else. And obviously, as like a designer and a developer, that's really nice to, well, not have to rewrite code multiple times, or not having to make a custom script just for this object. The object is just a like amalgamation of your other components, and all you do is stick them on and tweak the settings. But shaders seem very just like, this object has a shader, and then tons of settings on it, I guess. And I know it's like bad practice, as far as I'm aware, to have like too many materials on the same object, because each material is like its own render, like
its own pass.
Its own pass. So, if your player, like, you ideally want to have one shader that has all the stuff for the player, rather than 5 that has like 5 different effects. Like,
yeah, you don't want to stack every effect onto one mesh, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
That's actually how I started. When I was just learning Unity, I was making 3D models in Maya by assigning a different color as a new material, which is like a terrible thing to do.
I think everyone does that at the start.
Yeah, I've heard it from other people as well, that you import it into Unity and it's like, okay, so now I've got like 10 different materials on this mesh just to show these 10 different colors.
Yep.
Which is not a good idea.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of questions in chat we're missing, I think.
Oh yeah, no, we'll be able to get to them. But okay. I guess the final thing I want to say on that is, yeah, like with Blender, I'm like, okay, I want this part to be red, this part to be blue. Okay, I've got all these materials, go into Unity, assign them all, or they're all assigned already. And then I always think like, is this a good idea? Matte_red, matte_blue. And I'm like, that just doesn't...
That's exactly what I had, yeah.
And then eventually I found out about like texture atlases and reusing colors, and I was like, this makes sense. But then it just opened another can of worms, like, okay, but I see people have their kind of different shades, but then what if you get this other thing that wants a different kind of red? I guess you just add it to your color palette, or like, do you try and use one of these atlases for like everything in your game?
Have you seen my texturing method or not?
I know I've like tuned into parts of the stream, or I've seen stuff somewhere, but I'll say no. You might as well explain.
Okay, so maybe I should actually show something for this.
Okay.
So what I do is I'll just quickly explain.
It might be quite small on the stream. I haven't got a good way.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be big. Let me just.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can talk and find it at the same time. Let's see if I'm clever enough. So what I do is I use gradients, and I have a really tiny texture that has a ton of different strips of gradients on it, and I use that as my texture for everything. Well, I mean, I do split them up, so like one environment will have one texture of 64 by 64 pixels, and that's enough for an entire environment, because I'll just put some like a bit of noise on top of it so it doesn't look quite as bland. But I have a Google my own name. So I have one on Sketchfab that I always show off as something that I can like just to show off what you can do with this method, and that's this dress. Let me see if I can share the screen.
Yeah, we'll get back to questions after we've done this.
One sec. I just want to show it.
Oh yeah, show.
You know, I'm a visual person. I gotta show stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when you explain the method, it makes sense. Like, so wait, with that method, do you cover like every possible color basically?
Can you see this?
Yeah, I can see that. Yep.
So this is a 3D model I made. Let's see, can I see what it looks like on the stream? So, and if you go to the texture, diffuse, this is the texture.
Okay.
So you don't need like a giant texture. This is just 64 by 64 pixels, or maybe even smaller. And what I do is I just grab pieces and lay them on top of this gradient.
So if other people use this method, would that make their stuff kind of have your style? That kind of like.
I think so. If you want to see a game that uses this method, Ooblets uses this. If you've heard of that game, I think it's still in early access.
I think I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it, or maybe I have. There's also your game, you know, you could say that too.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
But Ooblets uses just this. I've been trying to add on top of it with like different textures. So you have this, and then in my game, if it's a character, it'll just be this. If it's an environment, I'll use this, and then do a world space, sort of like a painty effect over it, you know. But yeah, that's all of the texturing I use. So you don't need a lot. Some people just use flat colors, but I think this lets you do a lot more cool things.
Yeah.
There's bits like here it goes really. Let's see. You can pull it down. God, it's really hard to explain. But some people say, why don't you just use vertex colors? Because you can do sort of this with vertex colors. But the nice thing about this is you can pull it from here. And if you pull the vertex down, it goes up here again. And then you can make some really like bright pop out bits that you can't do in vertex color.
Yeah.
So that's why I use this method. And it's also very easy to switch out. So if I wanted this dress to be red and gold or whatever, I can just have the same layout of gradients and swap the colors, and that's a lot harder with vertex colors.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like you mentioned, this is a really easy way just to use like effectively 4 colors. I know it's more than 4 colors. It's just you've got 4 different strips of color or gradients.
Yeah.
And you said how the fact it's a gradient makes it look a bit more interesting. It would be also interesting to see a comparison between this and the same thing without a gradient. Like, you could just swap it on top and see what it would look like, and it'd probably look a lot worse, hence why you'd use a gradient, because it does make it look a lot better. But yeah, I'll have to keep that in mind for when I probably open up Blender, deciding on a day that I'm going to get back into shaders and then just give up immediately. But I think one of
I have a ton of tutorials on how to use this effectively. Yeah. If you want to get into that.
See, that's the thing. I've spoken to like 2 other people who do shader related things, and they've said like, I have plenty of resources on this, and I say I'm going to go check them out, and I don't. And that's nothing against them. It's me. It's like I end up.
No, I get it.
I end up looking up other stuff like coding, multiplayer, whatever other stuff I look at. I have to force myself to do this, and it also means I'll have to kind of be free from doing my other stuff so I can justify like spending a day just shaders today. I'm gonna understand something new by the end of the day. But yeah, like I still get inspired a lot by seeing loads of different shader things, whether that's on Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, whatever. There's that YouTube channel. He does them not in Unity, he does them in Blender, but is it Lightning Boy Studio or something like that?
Sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, he's made... I don't know if that's the name, and I'm not going to go look it up now, but he's made like a cool kind of cel-shaded like hair shader, and then he made a... just like different characters, but like made them look really interesting, and I don't know, it just looks really cool. And then he does animation as well, so he makes like little short films, I think. They might be making a game too, or was it just a short film? I'm not sure, but yeah. Should we get back to questions now?
Yeah, there's a bunch of questions.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to start addressing them.
Let me have a look.
I'm gonna go down the list we've got in our chat. So
Minion, when will your game release? I don't know. People ask me that all the time, but I don't know. Maybe in 10 years, who knows?
How many years?
Well, hopefully not that long.
How many years have you been working on it now? Would you say?
Hold on, that's hold on. Let me I can go further on that a bit later because someone asked that. Do you want to try Amplify Shader Editor? Like I said, graphs just don't really work with me. Here we go. So yeah, Nikki asked, when did you start working on Astrocat and what was the inspiration? So let's all go back to 2015. Was it 2016? I was reading a thread about Star Citizen on Something Awful forums, and someone was making videos. I don't know if I'm going to open a can of worms here again. But someone was making videos about all of the glitches in the game. That person's avatar was a grey cat. And I made fan art of the grey cat in Star Citizen, standing in front of a character being T-posed in the floor. And that's basically where the game started. That's when I first drew a character that looked a lot like what my main character looks like now. So that's how it sort of started, and then I was like, I've worked on a lot of games that never came out because I was just doing art and things fell apart on the programmer side, or something else happened which made a game not release. So I've been working on various projects for like 2 or 3 years, and I had nothing to show for it because nothing came out. So it's like, I'm just gonna do it myself. So I thought, I'm going to learn how to program and I'll make a walking simulator because that's probably all I can do. I can't make combat. I can't, do anything interesting. So I'll just make an environment that you can walk through, and that's it. And that's how Astrocat started. Yeah, that's how it started. So I was like, I sort of know how to make cute 3D things, so I'll just make an environment, use that character I drew, and then start posting on Twitter about it, as everyone starts. and slowly it got more and more complicated, basically. So yeah, that was in 2016, I think.
It goes to show that
started that
the inspiration can come from anywhere, because that
maybe I could find that drawing.
There's kind of an obscure like reason to start on such a big project.
How would I find that? I mean, it's posted online, so it's got to be somewhere.
It's going to be somewhere on the internet, you know. Might take you many years to find it. Unless you, or have you got it somewhere already? Have you gone back to it ever since? Like the video or the post or whatever?
No, someone posted it on some collection. Maybe am I not selling a print of this?
So you said it would be at the start, you know, just like a walking simulator with like a nice environment and characters, but I'm guessing by the sounds of it you've added much more than just that now.
Yeah, so actually, originally I have to say I'm a 2D artist. I'm not a 3D artist. I was always doing 2D art. The thing behind me, if you can see it, I drew that. That was my thing. I was just doing 2D art, and then slowly I taught myself how to use Maya, and went from trying really realistic things, just went to cutesy 3D. So my early 3D art, when I just started this project, actually looked pretty bad. And I'm sure I can find that as well. I'm just trying to show everything. That's just that's what happens when you ask an artist over, I guess.
Well, it's the same as if someone asked me to go look at like the code that I first ever wrote, thinking that, oh, like I can code now, so of course I could always code, but no. I'm thinking back to some bad like practices I used to have, or you know, one thing with coding is you'll learn like a new best practice, and I think I say this quite a lot. You know, you'll hear about a feature of a programming language or a best practice, and then you'll overuse it to the point where it becomes a bad practice. Like,
yeah,
that happened with me with plenty of things. I mean, I think it happens to most programmers. They'll think this thing is going to save their project and it's going to make their entire rest of their programming life so much easier. They now know how to use interfaces, let's say in C#, and then you decide everything becomes an interface, and then it defeats the point of using it. And then you go back and realize, wait a minute, okay, it's nice I now know how to use this, but I probably don't need to use it in all of my scripts, maybe in like a couple, and in those couple of places it'll really help you. But it's the right tool for the right problem, not just this is how to make your programming.
I had that when I first learned about scriptable objects. I was trying to turn everything into scriptable objects.
Yeah, I went through that one too. Because I feel like the resources I saw about it did try and oversell it a bit. Like
is it that one talk?
The Ryan Hipple?
I think that's the one.
The overthrowing the mono behavior.
Yeah.
I can't remember the whole title, but it's a really long title. Something about the tyrannical mono behavior and the scriptable object revolution or something. Or something like that.
Yeah.
But
and after that, it was like, okay, this sounds great. I'm gonna try it. And then I reached the point where it was like, I don't know what anything does anymore.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I used them all over the place, but at the time of learning about them, I was like, why do I ever need a mono behavior? Like, of course you do, because you still need some logic to exist in your game world. You know, it's like saying, well, why don't they just make the mesh renderer component a scriptable object? Well, that doesn't make sense, does it? But yeah, I definitely did overuse them, and then by overusing them, I found the limitations and the reasons you don't use them. To do with how data's serialized. Obviously, if you have a player and you set it to 100 health, and then you play the game and they die and whatever, and then you start playing again, every time you hit play, it's a fresh new restart. Whereas with scriptable objects in the editor, they save their values afterwards, and then you get the weird behavior where you might learn about that and you plan around it, but then when you build your game, they do save. Like if you shut down the game and reopen your game, the scriptable objects will have the same data they did, like every time. So it's that behavior that is consistent. Like once you know about it, it's not like it's random, but it's weird. If you're not used to it, it catches you off, or at least it caught me off guard. And apparently plenty of other people on the forums and on the internet, because I was searching for answers. But Yeah, they are definitely useful for a lot of things. I mainly use them. I was talking with Jason Wyman about this. We were discussing scriptable objects, and they're used for storing data, obviously. That's the main stuff. You can have logic in there, but mainly for storing data, and it's data that you don't want to change during the game being played. It's meant to be developer-friendly, stuff that stays the same. So I was thinking, like, obviously on prefabs, it's the same kind of thing. You change the data on there as a designer, like on that particular prefab. It's kind of similar, but obviously not everything needs to be a prefab. A prefab is something you spawn in, something you need to be instantiated, whether that's enemies or projectiles or whatever. And then I'm thinking, my best example I always go to is, what if your game has elements, like elemental effects, right? And
I did that like last week in a scriptable object.
And did you revert it, or have you stuck with that?
No. So I use scriptable object for I just added damage channels to Astrocat. So I have like, oh, this is the electric damage, and then I'll have like a particle effect in the scriptable object linked to it. So like elements, and then it'll be like electric, and I'll have like, is this a damage over time effect with a bool, and then some damage numbers and how long it lasts and all of that stuff. It's just a color associated with it. It's really nice to have that in a scriptable object, I think.
Yeah, I've used it like you said. So I'd make the like element scriptable object class, and all I'd have in it is some data that I can set. Like maybe the element has a color and an icon and a name and maybe a short description, and then wherever in your game you need to refer back to it, you can just drop in that scriptable object and just grab the bit of data you need. That's the main use of it. And then
and all of my inventory items, they're all scriptable objects, and I made a nice little editor window so I can drag in.
Yeah, I've always been torn on that
icons and
with inventory items, because it starts off simple. Like you might have like an apple, and it's like, okay, you do that, but then you might get to a point where you have, let's say, a weapon that has durability, and then you fall into the issue of like, oh, but now each individual sword needs extra data that's like for that instant, and in scriptable objects it's like
I have that already. So I just turned the scriptable object into a list, and then in the list I'll add some value to it if I need to. I mean, it's already working for me, because I have stuff like here's a bomb, and I need to have a certain number of them. So that's just separate,
Wait, so like, let's say you say you have durability, right? That's the thing you have.
I don't have durability.
Okay, but what do you have instead? Like something similar, where like an item has a bit of data. That's
So like you have bombs.
Yeah.
And you just have a bomb, and then separately there's a number of how many you have.
Yeah. I've done that for a quantity, but what about like this sword is 50% broken, but this sword, it's the same type of sword, but it's 25% broken. Like,
then it would be a different entity. Maybe I have a feeling I'm being really dumb here. So.
Well, I think. Oh,
I'm misunderstanding.
Someone just donated. It's in and out again. In one of Nathan's videos, he created a timer class, even though Unity already has wait for seconds. Why did he do that? I think I did that as like a utility thing. So it would be a component you stick on, and it has like a Unity event that gets raised after a certain amount of time. And obviously, wait for seconds already does exist. But let's say you want 5 different things to wait for a different amount of time to then do a different effect. You'd have to code that like 5 different times in 5 different scripts. But if you want something that's reusable, like just something happens after a certain amount of time, and it's that generic, just a thing happens after X amount of seconds, I think that's a good time to make a component that does that logic. So just the code will say, after this many seconds, raise this Unity event, and you can plug that into anything. That's the reason I think so. It's been a long time. When I get asked about like, why did you do this in this video from 1.5 years ago? I'm just like, I probably had a good reason for it at the time. Maybe it was a bad idea. But another thing is, people obviously learn and do things differently all the time. Like, people are always expanding their knowledge. So just because I did something 1.5 years ago, or 2 years ago, or 1 year ago, or even a couple months ago, like it doesn't mean it's the way I would do it today if I was to do it again.
Yeah, that's the nice thing. It's nice to have like a library of things people can look back at, but then it sort of bites you in the ass because you're like, why did you do this? And I'm like, I don't actually know.
Yeah, I mean that's the best way of explaining it. It's like, yeah, it's nice to have all these videos and people can go look at them years after they were made, but at the same time you then get comments on old videos asking why you did something that you don't even do anymore, but it's like, well, 2 years ago I did, sorry. Someone will go back and comment on like my first ever video saying the audio is a bit too quiet. What am I meant to do about that? It's like, just check my recent videos and make sure that I've got good audio. If I still have bad audio now, then feel free to comment. But yeah, like having those comments back at that time was useful to like improve when I was started YouTube and the audio's bad or whatever. And then now it's like, do you really need to go back and comment on videos that are that old? Like I always, if I was ever to comment on a video, I always check the date just to make sure. Yeah, I wouldn't.
A lot of people don't do that.
No,
you can really tell.
Yeah, it's like, do I go back and respond to my first ever video from 2 and a bit years ago and say like, sorry, I'll make it louder in the next video? And it's like 200 videos since. Like I've improved on those things. Don't worry. But yeah, thanks for the donation in and out again. What topic were we on when that came in? It was about, you said your solution would be to, or like maybe have actual separate entities with the different things, but that is a way that would work, and I thought about that, but then you would like, let's say your thing had 100 different, like 100%, 99%, 98%, you don't want like 100 separate scriptable objects for all the different percentages. And every time...
I wouldn't have... the scriptable object would just be the base, right? And then I take the scriptable objects and turn it into like a...
You put it in like a normal class.
Put in a list.
Yeah.
God, I don't know. I'm really bad at explaining programming.
No, I think I know what you
know what I'm talking about.
I think I know what you mean.
Like
yeah.
The scriptable object will be like the blueprint, and the actual object that you'll use in game is something that's just in a list.
Yeah, I always have like the base item you would refer back to, and that's where you'd grab like the icon and the name and other stuff like that. But then you always want, like, for example, you might make a normal C# class for an item, and that item will also store like a scriptable object of the base item. So for this item, you can go grab the base item's name or icon, but you can also in there store the quantity or whatever else. I've still like never settled on a good solution though, because durability might only be for a certain number of items, and then some items might have another thing, like they might be enchanted, and then maybe an enchanted item can be stacked or can't be stacked, and you get into the thing of like, well, I could just add loads of bools for like do this or do this or do this or do this. And in the past, I once made a projectile class that had like a bool for like deal damage over time, stun enemy, and all the various effects in the game, and I could just go through and it's great, I get to tick it all, but this one script is now on every single projectile in the game, and it's like an Uber shader but in code by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
And it works, but it's one of those things that I would never do again, because the way I'd do it is I'd make a script for dealing damage over time or something, and then just use that, and then I don't have all the other overhead.
Into a projectile.
Yeah, I mean it's not like as simple as just make a damage over time script and stick it in. It has, it depends on your game's current architecture, and there's various other things. But as a general rule of thumb, I try and force myself to take advantage of components, because there's so many great ways you can reuse components to get logic. Like I used to make the player health script and the enemy health script and this health script, and that would inherit from the health script. And then I'd have this boss health script inherit from enemy, inherit from like health. It was just like this massive inheritance tree, which is generally a good thing to avoid, because it's so hard to make changes, because you'll decide you want to make this change to the enemy class, and you might want it to affect almost all your enemies, but not actually all of them, but now it affects all of them because they all inherit it. Whereas with components, you can just take off a component and it won't affect anything else. Or you can change that component and it won't affect anything else. So yeah, you definitely get a lot more benefits from composition over inheritance. That's something, like one of the first things they ever got us to do when I started doing programming, even right at the basic level. I remember reading in our textbook, there's just like one line, it just said composition over inheritance. Yeah. Are you laughing because the guilt of just because I used to have really bad inheritance trees all over the place.
I've never actually gone to that point.
Okay.
I've always been more component driven, if that makes sense.
Okay, well that's a good thing. It's just
I think that's because of learning from the internet, I guess. From if you look up Unity tutorials, usually people use components for everything. So
yeah, I guess that was a bad thing about learning programming, like a bit of Python at school, because you don't have any composition there. You just have like, oh, you make this class, and you learn about how to inherit a class, what abstraction is, and like base classes, and like all the other terminologies, polymorphism, and all this complex inheritance stuff. Then when you come to Unity, you're like, this is actually kind of bad practice for most things. It's like, it's not that you should never inherit, but if you're getting into a point where you've got like 10 classes inheriting each other and it's branching out everywhere, then you're probably in for a mess. Yeah, I always cringe a little bit. Like, I never comment or say anything, but if I see someone's tutorial and the way they've done their items is like, I understand if your game is super duper simple and this won't cause you any issues, then it's fine. But if you have like an item class and an apple inherits item, and then sword inherits item, and then great sword is inherited from sword, which is inherited from and you get this big tree of how your items are. But then I'll be like, yeah, but what if you want this item? It's a weapon, but it's also edible. Let's say it's like a gingerbread sword or something dumb, right? It's like, you can't add that, or you can. But would you inherit from like one of the food items or one of the sword items? And how would you merge that? It's like, but if you had the logic for both those things completely separate and you then just stuck them both on,
edible and item onto something, and then
exactly. The item class should just have like name, icon, whatever every item has, and only that data, and then that's the component you stick on, or however you want to set it up. Yeah, there's always going to be better ways. But
I feel like no matter what you do, how good your intentions are, in the end, every project's going to be a mess.
Yes, yeah, that's true. But
if I hear my husband talk about his projects and he works for an actual company, I hear him complain about it too. So I don't think there's any way to avoid it.
No, it's like, it's going to be a mess. Just try and make it a small mess rather than a big mess. Yes. Don't dig yourself too deep of a hole. Just, some things you've got to make compromises on to save time. But, especially if you're learning, when time isn't the biggest issue and you're trying to actually learn, then you can sometimes take the longer route of like actually properly thinking about the structure and how to not, mess it up for later. When you come back and you're like, when we're going to make an extension to the game, we're going to add a DLC or we're going to add some new content, we need 50 new items. And those items are like more interesting than the items you already have. So they've got extra features. You don't want it to be like impossible to extend just because of how you previously coded everything.
Yeah.
Oh, and In and Out was donated again. What indie game is Joyce currently playing? Any games you're playing?
Does this count as indie? I think it's more like a AA. So my husband and I are playing through 13 Sentinels right now.
Never heard of it.
Oh god, what's the developer again? They made Dragon's Crown and Odin Sphere. But it's one of those games where I can't say anything without spoiling it. It's a giant mystery. It's sort of like visual novel style with combat separate. The combat is a bit tower defense turn-based combat. Vanillaware, thank you, Mick. Vanillaware made it. But the story is insane, and I can't say anything without spoiling things. Let's just say that it's a sci-fi mystery, and we're about halfway through, and every time, so you follow 13 characters, and every time we switch to another character, I'm like, oh, so that's what happened. And then
it's like a murder mystery or something.
Yeah, exactly. There is murder involved. But yeah,
Spoiler,
it's like a sci-fi mystery with aliens and robots and kaiju, and it's really good. But you do gotta get through the initial this is very anime bit, if that makes sense.
That's fine if you're into it. So
yeah, that's I would recommend it.
Mick has posted a
stick
trailer.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah, have a look at the trailer after the stream. Don't go leaving us now, please. Let's move on to the next question. Thanks again for the donation from In and Out. Where were we in questions? Because I know you went for a few on your own.
Okay, so that was still, when did you start working on Astrocat? I never found the stupid picture. It's somewhere in my files, but God knows what I called it. Probably something like finished_final 3-4. Very sane naming conventions I'm using.
How about the question, what is your 5-year plan?
My 5-year plan?
Yeah.
Move out of this house. I don't know. Maybe by that time Astrocat will be done. I don't know.
Do you keep adding new kind of? Do you keep expanding the scope? That's what I meant to say.
I keep trying things. Yeah, I feel like every time I try something, I learn more, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done this different. And
is the end in sight?
I feel like no, there's no end in sight.
Okay.
Not even a beginning started. I feel like what I'm doing is I'll be making levels, and I suck at making levels, so I just keep redoing them to learn. If that's I don't know if that's probably a bad idea, but I mean, it's not the only thing I'm doing. I'm also doing freelance work as a technical artist, and I'm also making all of the Patreon content. So it feels like I should be working on it more, but in the end, there's always so much other stuff also happening.
Yeah, it's like you want it to be your main project almost, but it's also a side project at the same time because other things kind of take a bit more importance. Yeah. It's kind of like the same with me right now. Like I do at some point want to have like a period of time to just work on my own game, even if it's just again like a learning experience. Just to.
Do you have a game in mind, or are you already beginning?
I've had like ideas in mind. I've thrown things around. I've started things, and I've always stopped due to certain reasons. I mean, the one has just been like time and being busy with other things. And before I like did any Unity stuff for like work, when I was just back in school doing it like on the side, I'd do school and I'd come home and I'd be like enthusiastic about actually working on stuff. And it's not that I've lost my enthusiasm now. It's that if I'm working all day on Unity related things for like the channel or courses or whatever, then by the evening I want to go relax. It's kind of like, rather than school being boring and then you get to Unity at night, it's like Unity through the day, and in the evening it's like, I've been doing Unity for the past however many hours, I want to relax and watch something or play something. I don't want to
or your brain just feels melted.
It's like
can't take anymore.
It's like I would do more in the evening, but then there's also other things I want to do. I want to hang out with friends online. Well, at least now it's online, isn't it? So it's just, I know at some point I will want to, and now I'll get to a point where like, okay, this many weeks, this many months, this year, whatever. And to be honest, I'd be happy doing it for like, not just I'm gonna leave the YouTube channel and go work in my own thing. I would stream it, or I'd make content on it, so I'd still be doing stuff, but I'd maybe cut back on the tutorials for that period of time and just make more of kind of development content. And I could make tutorials out of that. And then obviously maybe for that period of time I like wouldn't work on a course on the side, because that obviously uses up quite a bit of time. But it's all about balancing things, and I'm not like sad at the moment that I don't get to work on my own thing. I'm happy that like I'm doing all this other stuff as well. But yeah, I guess the difference is I haven't got a full plan in mind where like, I want to do this, it'll take this long, I'll release it and I'll sell it on Steam and blah blah. I just have cool ideas in mind that I'd like to make, even if they never fully made like a finished game.
You can always put them on itch or something.
Yeah,
free.
or just even then, like I could make videos about it, right, and show people, because people always ask like, oh, like what project are you working on? And at the moment, nothing. I'm making content for the channel, content for the course. I am messing with my own stuff in my own time, but only here and there. So yeah, maybe at some point. Go on.
Do you feel like whenever you're not producing something for your channel that you should be, because I always feel like, oh, I'm just gonna draw something today because I haven't drawn anything in ages and I'm really rusty, and then I'm like, oh, but I need to post this on Twitter, so it needs to be good, and then I get so how do you say, I stress myself out about it and I can't do it anymore. Do you feel like sometimes you want to work on something, but in the back of your head you're like, but can I post this somewhere? Can I share this? Can I turn this into content? It's really,
I feel like because obviously I have less of an artistic side of things. If I made something and like it like worked and it didn't look good, I'd probably still be happy sharing it, because people don't expect like a certain quality of how it looks from me. It's more like, hey, look at this mechanic I made. I know they're all just capsules, but I don't care. Or whatever. Like when I've been doing the multiplayer stuff, most of the videos are just capsules or like the default Mixamo character just running around in like an empty environment, and no one actually cares because that's not my content. My content is just like, look at this working. I've got 2 instances of the game and it's all working together, and yeah, so it is all to do with like what content you're doing.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit less stressful if you don't have the art hanging over you.
But I guess the last, like the stuff I've been working on recently in my own time, I don't see it as, oh, I need to use this for the channel. It's more about like, whenever I learn something new, I'm like, that's content. That's a video idea. Yeah. Like if it's like, oh, I've now learned how to use this package, or I've learned how to use this part of Unity that's always existed but I've never used it, I'm like, people probably want to know that. And I don't usually even ask. I always ask at the end of my video for people to let me know down below what you want to see next, that kind of idea. But at the same time, if I come up with something that I want to do, like that's something new I've learned, I'll just do it. And you know, usually you can gauge from the response, like of views and comments, like, do people actually, are they interested in this or not? And yeah, again, most of my audience is, I'd say, like programmers in the kind of intermediate range. So the nice thing there is when I'm teaching code, I don't have to explain what the start and update method is. I don't have to explain what a class and a variable inheritance is. I just go in assuming on YouTube that like they know all that stuff for my channel. And I understand not everyone clicking to watch will, but it's the huge majority that will. And people, I've done like more beginner-ish kind of videos in the past, and people have said like, we all know this stuff, you know, like don't waste time going over all the basics all the time, because we want to watch
it. There's already a lot of people who just cover basics. So
exactly.
It's nice to have someone who goes a bit more in depth like you.
Yeah, I've always thought like maybe I'm missing out on potential people by not doing beginner content. But whenever I've tried beginner content, it doesn't get a lot of views because there's already so much of it. And then people comment like, just stick to intermediate. That's what we're here to watch. I'm like, yeah, I guess I should just stick to intermediate, and that's what I've done ever since. Like stick to what you're good at, you know. It seems to work well. And I am also, I do enjoy doing the multiplayer and the more advanced stuff anyway. It's just that those videos take a lot longer to prepare for and make than like a how to do this basic thing that everyone's seen 100 times. Like you can just go make that video easy. I could just wake up tomorrow, record it, get it out by lunch. But if I'm doing a video about, oh yeah, like using Azure PlayFab to do server hosting and have leaderboards and authentication and all this other multiplayer stuff, then that'll take a lot longer to prepare for. So yeah,
I'm surprised you say you can record a beginner video and have it out by lunch. Did you say that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
like,
actually upload.
Christ, you're editing. You will be editing fast. If I record a video and it's like for 5 minutes, it takes me like 3 days to edit because I am terrible at it.
That's the thing. Like, I would not describe myself as a video editor, even though in a literal sense I do edit for my own videos, and I edit for the course videos on GameDev TV with the multiplayer course. Oh, there's another donation. I'll address that in a second. But yeah, I think my editing is literally just intro, teach, outro, and the most editing there is in the middle of the video is just cutting. It's basically just cutting out me slipping up on words, or me coding something and it not working, and then being like, uh-oh, I need to go back and re-record that because I messed something up. Like, I used to just think of an idea, record it, and edit it, but it would take a lot longer. Now I think of an idea, make sure it works, and then start from scratch. Like, I usually would make the video, commit it to GitHub so the code's all there for everyone, and then start a new project, open GitHub on my second monitor so I have the code I've written, and work towards that. So I get back to where I was. Yeah. And that's worked pretty well for a long time, so I'm sticking to that for now. And I think people like it because they like having the code. And yeah, I don't know. My editing is just really simple. That's why it doesn't take very long. Yeah, a lot of people have said, like, how do you just make a video so quick when you come up with an idea? And it's like, because my editing is just me talking and teaching and cutting bits out that are boring or me slipping up, and then, hey, we have a video, and it's educational and simple. It's not flashy and fancy and everything. So
maybe that's kind of a positive of making videos in your first language, because I always feel like I'll be re-recording lines because I feel like I said something wrong, or I pronounced something different, or I used the word wrong or something, and I'll be just re-recording the same lines.
Yeah, I guess I have that look on my side there. But also, funnily enough, you mentioned that, and we didn't plan you to mention that, but we're having a video coming out right after this stream in about 15-20 minutes, maybe a bit longer, whenever we end stream, where Mick, who you'll see in chat, Mick Rustenhoven, our moderator and my business partner, he's made a video. He's starting a series on the channel, so I'm continuing with Unity. We're not going to reduce the Unity to add other stuff. I'm doing Unity, and he's going to be doing Arduino and electronics projects on the channel. And like we did post about this a week ago, so it's not a surprise, like, here's the announcement. We did post about it, but not many people have probably seen it. So yeah, if anyone is interested in that kind of stuff, like getting started with electronics, programming for that stuff, making cool little gadgets and gizmos, you know, he's the person to ask more about it than me. I've been focused more on the Unity stuff, but yeah, the video will be coming out after this. Go check that out. And he's Dutch, like you, obviously, you know that. And I had to help him a lot with the recording and editing process. Well, I did the editing, but yeah, recording in your non-native language must be painful. And I don't know what it's like because I don't fluently speak any other languages. I don't really speak any other languages at all, so I've never had to do it. But yeah, yeah, it's like phrases seem to be the hard part, like the right way to say a certain phrase. But I don't think people really care on the internet. As long as they can understand it, like they can figure out what it means, no one's gonna care.
That's true, but still, if you're editing it yourself and you hear yourself say it, then you sort of cringe.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm editing my own videos, I think, like, am I in English? Am I English? Like, I'm watching my own videos back. What am I saying here? Or like, how do I not, like, I have to do 10 takes to take. I can't even speak right now. I have to do 10 takes for a single sentence, and that's not every sentence, but yeah, I'll hit record and I'll be like doing my intro and I'll mess up my intro, so I'll stop and start about 10 times. Once I've done the intro and I've got into the flow, I usually don't mess up as much, but then once you do mess up and you start again, it's like takes a bit to get off the ground again. You've ruined your flow. And
yeah, I just feel really awkward sitting here talking to my microphone. When I'm streaming, at least I feel like there's someone, you know, listening directly to me, so it doesn't feel as awkward. But if I try to make a video, I'm just there like going, hello.
Yeah, that's.
I just really hate it.
Well, that's the thing about the streams. It's like surprised me and most of the people I've spoken to, and probably you too. You just kind of get into it and it works, because I might slip up loads on the videos, but I slip up a lot less on the stream, and when I do, I don't care because it's a stream, you know. People aren't expecting.
People expect it. So...
I've not got a script that I'm reading off and like
no
speaking perfectly. If I slip up, I'll just make a joke out of it and just act stupid and, you know, and just laugh. And then...
Joyce sips tea right now.
Yeah.
Why does it say that then if it's not scripted?
Yeah. Looking to my other monitor. No. But yeah, like you said before this, obviously you were saying like, I don't know how I'm going to talk for this long, but it's worked, right? Like,
works,
it's worked. Yeah. We're still talking.
Like you yourself are very good at talking, so that helps.
Is that a way of saying I talk too much? I know. I tend to.
No, I mean, it's just I'm usually a quiet person, and to have someone who is talkative like you, it really helps.
I usually think that when I get a guest on, I'm like, yay, they're a talkative person. It helps because I'm shy and quiet. But at the same time, like, once I get talking on a topic, I need someone to stop me. if it's something I'm like more passionate about, or on the scriptable object stuff, I was like, okay, I need to stop talking now. And then when you were talking about shaders and you were saying certain terminologies, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure all the chat understands, like, a lot of the people that are like know you and do shader stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what that means, but keep going. Like, yeah. What else do you have here? Someone asked, what did we both study? Do you want to answer that first?
So I went to a course for game art, and it was complete shit, and I didn't learn anything, so I consider myself self-taught.
Okay, that was the end of it.
Yeah, it was just so bad. I don't know how they managed to make it so bad. So we were supposed to learn Maya, and I remember one time beforehand the teacher said, I'm going to teach you how to render something now, which is like, oh, that sounds very important, right? To render something in Maya. And I never learned because that day the trains were delayed, and like 6 of us were late for the class, and the teacher was like, I'm pissed off now, I'm not going to teach you. And that was the end of it. Like, how do you get paid for this? I wasn't even taught how to unwrap a model, which is why I ended up with that weird gradient method.
I mean, like, certain things they teach, it's like great and all, but I could go watch a YouTube video and know about it in 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And it was a course on game art.
Yeah,
and
I find
no one had any experience making games. None of the teachers. They've never made games.
I find a lot of universities that teach game courses, I don't know if this is true for all of them, but they kind of put it on there to be an enticing option to get people to go on it. But like the professors might be computer science professors or some other professor in some way, but not in the games field. So they just kind of wing it a bit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the thing is,
course doesn't exist anymore. I wonder why.
The benefit is, like, I wouldn't be able to go now and become like a professor and teach game development because of, like, I guess, qualifications. But at the same time, I can teach it on YouTube. No one's paying for it, so there's no expectations of like, I'm paying for this course, whatever. But at the same time, people can respect it if it's good content. Like, that's the best thing about YouTube, right? Like, the good content does well and the bad content generally doesn't. And then people just find what they want to learn and they learn it for free. And I don't know, it just works better rather than like you're paying a fixed amount of money for, like, no matter how good or bad the quality is, and you've got to stick with it or I guess drop out, and then it's all just for a piece of paper in the end anyway.
A piece of paper that no one ever asks you for, at least when it comes to art.
Well, no,
I've never been asked for my game art diploma or whatever it's called. Yeah. It's over there, that's why I'm looking off. It's over there somewhere in the box.
I thought you dropped out.
No, I finished it.
Oh, I swear you said like...
That's the shocking thing.
I thought you said it was so bad so you stopped it there. Maybe I misheard.
No. It was terrible, but I finished it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't learn anything, but I got an internship out of it somehow from just my own work. It was just a really weird situation.
Yeah.
I have to say it was like 2012 that I finished, so it's been a while. I'm old.
I mean, like, with the thing like you said there, it wasn't the piece of paper that mattered. It was like your own work. That's the most important thing, and that's obviously definitely true for art as a artistic field. Whereas like with programming, you tend to hear more that, like, because it's more academic, you need the qualifications. But I really don't think that's true. Like, maybe for certain positions, But yeah, again, having a portfolio or being able to show what projects you've done or just prove to people, like,
you usually get a coding test, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are against those, and I've never had to do one for whatever I've done so far. Because people always complain, like, they get you to remember, regurgitate like an algorithm that you learned back in school, and that you'll never use ever again anyway. And even if you do, you're not writing it out yourself. It already exists in libraries and online, and you can just go get it. Like, if you were ever really for your job using the algorithm again, you would not trust your memory to get it right for something that important. You'd probably just make sure. But obviously in the exam, you can't look stuff up and, you know.
Just Google it during the exam.
Yeah, because a real programmer workflow is having the internet open, having Stack Overflow, having whatever. The test and like school and stuff is not actually real, like what it's like. And
no,
like
Stack Overflow is the actual thing you need to have open.
Yeah. I mean, so the thing is, like, my answer to the question about, like, what... I can't remember the exact question is, what did you study? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I studied 3 subjects at A-level, which is, again, a UK thing, A-level. It's ages 16 to 18. I studied maths, physics, and computer science. And that's, like, as far as you have to go in the UK. You have to go till 18. Then after that, you either go to university, or you get a job, or you get an apprenticeship, like, working for a company or whatever. And that's when I did none of those 3 things, and I just did my own thing. My plan was, a lot of people here, if they've watched these before, I've probably mentioned it, but I decided I didn't want to go to university because I preferred being self-taught, and, you know, there's, like, the balances of, like, debt and not having debt, and is the education worth it, and what kind of person are you when it comes to learning, and how much do you value the degree? And so I thought, well, this is when my channel and everything was starting to kind of kick off a little bit. So I thought, I'll take the next year, because a lot of people take 1 year out to just do what they want. Some people will go on holiday. Some people will learn something new. They'll just take a year out of education, because they've been in education since 4 years old until 18. They'll take a year out for whatever reason. And then after that year, they'll start university or something. So I said to myself... Or not. Yeah, I said to myself, if everything's going well after this year, I'll continue, and if it's not, I'll go to university and get a degree or whatever. And then nothing happened for, like, by year I mean, like, in terms of September to September, like, academic year. So I didn't really have anything happen between September and then between September and December. Then in January is when like, me and Mick registered the company, and it's when I got, like, in with all the Unity stuff with, you know, like, you and everyone else. And then, like, loads of things just started happening all at once. And then GameDev TV reached out to me, and then we started making a course. And I was like, yeah, I think this is going well enough to not go to uni. Like, it was far beyond what I expected to happen in that year. I was thinking, like, oh, maybe by the end of this year, I'll have, like, a few commissions and I'll be able to, like, survive on freelancing for a bit. But then, like, all this stuff happened, and I was like, okay, I'm going to keep going with this then. And then, so I haven't got a degree, but I haven't been asked for one either when I've been trying to do anything. So, you know, no one seems to care.
That important, no.
No.
So when we met last year in February, you were still not sure what to do. I think you said.
Yeah, I think we were all talking about it. Like, me, you, and, like, James from Game Plus James were all discussing that kind of stuff. And I was at the time 18, so I'm only 19 now. And I was in my gap year effectively, and I was at that point I was like, this is great. I'm probably not gonna go next year, but I was still kind of thinking about it, like, maybe I should go. I'm glad I didn't, let's put it that way. And then here we are now 1 year later, COVID and everything. And yes, I'll be 20 next month. And it feels weird because obviously I've got friends and everyone at university, and some of them are happy with it. A few of them are regretting it. To be honest, it's not the best uni experience right now in lockdown anyway. They're still paying the full price, and like having, well, I know some people are managing to get a bit of the money back, but all they're having is just online lectures through like Zoom and stuff and Microsoft Teams, and it's not like really, you're paying $9,000 a year, like £9,000 a year for like some online lectures that aren't, for a lot of people, aren't even live. The teachers just pre-record it and stick it online. So
that doesn't sound fair.
It's literally like they're just getting a course on Udemy, and Udemy courses are like £10, £15, and this is £9,000 a year, and it's like,
yeah, that's not.
People feel like they're being
not a good year.
They're being ripped off. Yeah. It can be good for people who get access to like facilities at school that they wouldn't have at home, depending on what they're doing, right? If it's more like technology, like if you're doing whatever, there's plenty of things that universities have that your house won't have, but right now most people can't access those, so it kind of sucks for those people. But
for a lot of people, university is a social experience.
Yeah, and there's none of that.
And that's not happening at all.
Yeah, that's why people are demanding money back, and there's all that going on, because why should they be paying full price to get nothing? To get like, a few lectures online that aren't even live. You're not even actually speaking with your like professors or whatever. You're just they could just go give that to everyone. They could go publish it on YouTube, right? It wouldn't make a difference. So yeah, so I don't have a degree, long story short, and I'm fine with that. Like I said, I currently haven't been asked for it from like anything I've done, and maybe one day I will, but I don't think it will hinder my chances. Like, I feel like I will be able to show projects I've worked on, the channel, the courses, right? All these things. That's probably better than a piece of paper, like, in reality.
I think so.
I'm thinking if I was hiring someone and they just said, here you go, I qualified from this university and then I graduated, I'd be like, that doesn't tell me what you can do, really. Whereas, like, I worked on these projects, I've got all this, that, the other, and then you can actually look for it and be like, you get to see their skills more. It's like with art, having a degree doesn't
says a lot more than a piece of paper. Yeah.
Exactly. But I still don't get why there's such a push for it, like to go to uni. I understand, plenty of courses it's necessary for, and a lot of people want to go there, and I'm not saying like university should stop being a thing, but at the same time, I think people should stop saying it's compulsory, or like
I didn't go to uni. I mean, it's not technically uni, is it? It was just a course.
It's still like further education.
It's not uni.
Yeah.
It's not university. I mean, I have a feeling that it's called differently here. But if there's any Dutch people watching, it's just an MBO course. So it was nothing fancy. Maybe that's why it sucked so much. But
yeah,
there are a few courses. Well, maybe I shouldn't say a few. I know there's one course for game art that's actually good, which is given in Breda here. But other than that, the course I took doesn't exist anymore. They just completely scrapped it because I think they got complaints from the government that they were teaching people for something that doesn't exist. Or like that they were teaching too many people to be game artists, and the Dutch game industry is like 2 companies. So they were getting complaints. I think that's someone in chat studied at the school I had in my head. So there's a EGOT IGAD. That's the one. But yeah, it's just start making stuff instead of going to university, in my opinion.
And even if you go to university, you have to do your portfolio on the side anyway and still make stuff. So it's like, if you're okay with having to do both those things, then sure. But it's all about time management and whether you really need it. Because I looked at like what they teach in computer science for each year, and by the time, like, so the thing I was on about A level, the 16 to 18, the stuff they teach there is the same stuff that you would learn in your first year out of 3 at university. So that would just be like a repeat year, and it wouldn't feel that useful at all. And then the second year, would be some new stuff, but by that point I could have just taught myself a lot of that. And then maybe the third year stuff, you tend to like focus in on a certain topic and go more in depth in that. But at the same time, I can just do that anyway. I didn't really feel like if I went to uni, I would get much out of it. And people always say...
Just that.
Yeah. The 2 main things I hear people say out of uni is facilities, which I definitely agree with. But as a computer scientist, I just need my PC and the internet. And then as well as facilities, connections. and that's true. But then again, I've just managed without uni to get probably better connections than I ever expected anyway. Like, I didn't even like realize that I would ever be able to get in contact with Unity themselves. I didn't even, and then like they just reached out to me, and I was kind of like,
I thought it was a scam at first.
Oh, I did too.
The first time they reached out to me, it was like a few years ago. They're like, "Hey, you want to go to San Francisco?" I was like, "This isn't real. It sounds like a scam."
Yeah,
but, it was real.
When Elena from Unity originally reached out to me, the first message was a tweet, and she'd sent like a dog gif in the tweet, and I was like, "If someone from a company like would not do that." I don't know. That was my previous conception of like how people are at companies, like very strict and serious, and then like we would write letters in English at school, where it's like super formal written letters, and then now it's like you'll just send the most casual email, or you'll use Slack or Twitter just to message someone. It's so different to what
a lot of gaming companies are like that, I have to say. I haven't usually when I get approached by a gaming company or I reach out to them and it's super formal, I sort of get like bad vibes.
Yeah, I prefer it to just be casual. It's like, why does it have to be formal? It's what time is it now? It's just gone 8. Let's take maybe a couple more questions. I think I did see some interesting ones. Someone asked if I'm Fat Dino, which is another YouTuber that does game dev. They do Unreal stuff mainly. I don't think they don't do tutorials. They do like kind of I made this kind of videos, like look at this cool thing I made in Unreal. I've seen the channel a bit. Maybe I'll try and get them on sometime. I have no idea if they're interested, or if they ever show their face. One day I'll find someone who wants to stream but they don't show their face, and I'll have to think about how to deal with that, because every single stream so far I've always had the double webcam setup. So yeah, I'll deal with that problem when we get there. What else did someone ask?
I hear someone saying that my audio is quiet. I just put the microphone closer to my face again, so hopefully it's better.
Yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah, the increase in access to good learning resources since 2018 has been fantastic. Yeah, like it's only got better over the last few years, like how much stuff there is for you to learn from. I understand like quite a few years ago when that wasn't the case, you would really struggle self-teaching online maybe, but now there's just so much stuff, you know? Like a lot of the people I speak to studied one thing but just self-taught game dev, and here they are and they're making cool stuff, and you know, yeah,
exactly. Yeah, for me it's been like 10 years since I last did studying, and yeah, it's a very different landscape right now. It's much nicer. You can just find anything. You can find written tutorials, and you can find video tutorials, and you can find Discords where you can just get help from people live, and it's a very nice nice community around, at least around Unity. I assume it's the same for Unreal and other engines, that you can just jump into Discords and get help, but at least for Unity it's a very nice community.
Yeah, that's what I found. And like when I was starting, you know, I just opened up some YouTube videos, how to make a game in Unity, find brackeys, because that's just how it works. and you make something really simple, and then you're like, all right, but this isn't actually what I want to make. Like I get the fundamentals now at least. And then here we are. Like I'm thinking back to the first things I made, completely line by line copy, like not copy pasting, but like copying the typing of someone else, and then trying to like understand what it means. Like, what does this mean? When I first ever tried teaching myself programming, this was before I even did it in high school. I just tried Googling stuff like about programming, and I got nowhere. I couldn't even comprehend like how a variable works, like storing data in a word, and then what? It just didn't click with me at all. And then like when I did it again into high school, something clicked and it got me started. So school was useful for that. But then once I got started, I wanted to learn faster than the class was teaching. Be like a whole lesson on variables, functions, then on something else and something else. And I was like, yeah, okay, I get that now. Like I want to do something much more advanced, but that's beyond the scope of the course, or like beyond. So it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, I just go home and do all of that stuff.
Figure it out yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame that like I learned all that Python stuff, but I've never used Python outside of it, apart from just to mess about. Like sometimes, nothing I use uses Python. So Yeah, I mean, it's nice
I've
to
never
know.
touched Python, so I only hear that it's that there's something wrong with it.
It's just that the
It's always
syntax.
what I hear.
It's just that the syntax is so different from a lot. Like if you C# and you go to C++ or vice versa, or you go to JavaScript from C#, whatever. It's quite an easy learning curve. You go to Python, it's like what? It's like there's no semicolons. The way they do indentations is weird. There's no like curly braces. The way you define a class and everything. Like sure, you can put the two side by side and understand how you get from one to the other if you're kind of translating, but it's just so wildly different. And it just is weird that you don't have types. Now I understand some other languages don't have types, but even JavaScript, where you just say like let or var to declare a variable, in Python you're like, nah, x equals 10, done. just the
okay.
Literally just x equals 10, no semicolon, no int, no var, no let, no this. It's just so strange.
A Python developer for work in chat. I'm sorry, Thierry.
Yeah. I mean, I know some people love it, and obviously it has its benefits. It's mainly okay. Never mind then. He doesn't seem to like it, but yeah, I know maybe a few people that do. I guess the nice thing about it is you can just make a new Python file and just write something really quickly, and it works. But as you get like a bigger structured project, I have no idea how importing actually works, and like namespaces and sharing cross-file and just how the whole structure works. Whereas in C#, if I'm like making a website or a game, the folder structure, the solution, the project, it just makes so much more sense, at least to me. But yeah.
I only know C# basically, and I've dabbled in JavaScript a little, but other than that, I don't really know any programming languages.
But I think programming languages, it's like you only learn them when you need to. You learn C# because you wanted to do Unity, and then if you haven't needed to do anything else, there's not really a reason to learn it unless you for the sake of learning it. The reason I've learned
the only reason I have JavaScript is because I made a website, and I wanted things to build from a database, so I use JavaScript. That's the only reason I've even touched it.
Yeah, like I was looking into some like web frameworks, so I looked at a bit of JavaScript, TypeScript, and then now whenever we do web development, we use Blazor, which is actually a C# web framework by Microsoft.
Never heard of that. No.
It came out like properly last September, and I don't mean the September just gone, the year before, so 2019 September is when it came out of preview. So you still have your HTML, and you can use JavaScript, but the C# is meant to be there to replace the JavaScript. So yeah, I think over time they're slowly replacing more things, or like giving you a C# way of doing it. So right now it's like with the shaders thing, maybe like you'll look to do something and they haven't supported it yet in C# for Blazor, so you'll have to write it the JavaScript way. It's not ideal, but it's the compromise for now. But yeah, it's nice being able to, in the same file, you have some HTML to render a part of a website, and at the bottom you've got some C# methods that like that button calls that C# method. You don't have to have JavaScript then does like an API call to then have a C# backend. It's just, having multiple languages in one project, a lot of projects have that, but at the same time it can be a mess jumping between them or sharing code. You can't really share code because they're different languages. But yeah. What are people saying?
What's going on?
Python can be used for a RESTful API. Yeah, I've heard like this Python frameworks for web, like I think it's Django. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Like Django, could be any of those. But yeah, it's a way of writing Python backends, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Python like can be used for that. But at the same time, if I went to do a web backend, I wouldn't go to Python. I'd go to C#. I'd go to anything else, maybe. Probably not Python, because again, I'm not as comfortable with it, and I wouldn't see the benefit in using it unless you're like a sole Python developer, and it depends on how you're approaching it, what makes the most sense for you to use. But yeah, endless debate. My friend who prefers Unreal, he likes the pretty pics, so tries to insist that I learn C++. Oh, so he's saying like, yeah, that's another thing. When you've got friends that play games, they'll like kind of meme on Unity a bit, because they'll see some like indie Unity games and some like AAA Unreal games and be like, Unity's the worst engine because their games are indie games. Which
no, but it's also, if you start up Unreal Engine, if you start a new project in there, all of the bells and whistles are turned on, so you've got like really nice lighting, and you've got all of the nice post-processing effects and stuff.
And you might have...
If you start up Unity, you have like a cube, you know.
Yeah, or even, you don't even have a cube, you just have the skybox.
Boring skybox. Or...
Yeah. Though,
yeah.
Have you seen
that's probably the first impression. No, I know what you're going to say. That sample project does look a lot nicer. The new sample scene.
Yeah.
But people still have that default Unity cube with a gray background, the gray and blue skybox background in their head, and that's not. They're working on it. That first impression.
Yeah. I mean, plenty of AAA studios are using Unity now anyway. Like, for example, like Riot Games, obviously for like League of Legends, they've used their own engine, as far as I'm aware. And then, like, they've built that from the ground up. Whereas with their card game, Legends of Runeterra, they've used Unity. And then, like, for another one of their games, they're using Unreal. And, you know, like, studios now don't just use their own internal engines. They'll use these other engines because it just saves them time and money. If it can do what they need it to do, then why not? And also, when hiring developers, I'm not speaking from experience here, I'm just speaking from logic, I guess, what I'd expect. If you're hiring people, these people you're hiring will know maybe Unity, Unreal. They won't know your in-house solution that you've developed that's private, because you'll have to train them on it, right?
And that can take like
time and money
and or whatever.
Yeah.
To get someone really integrated into your own weird little internal engine.
Whereas you can just say, we need 5 Unity developers, and then everyone's like, me. Whereas, like,
exactly.
Otherwise, you're like, we need really competent developers who are willing to learn a new engine that they've never used before, and like blah 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 blah. Takes them more time and money to train them, and might not be successful because they've never used it before. You know, the only benefit is like you have full control, but at the same time, Unreal is open source as far as I'm aware, and Unity, if you're a company, you can sort out a deal to get open source access and things like that. So it shouldn't be a put off, basically.
Dane Beard is saying Genshin Impact is made with Unity, and
is that actually true?
That's the game that all of us VFX shader tech art people are drooling over to try and recreate all the effects.
I didn't know it was made in Unity.
Really good. It is. That's a really good looking game, and that really shows what Unity can do, I think.
Yeah, I've played it, but I didn't realize. Like, that's the thing. Yep. A lot of the time, you can realize this game's made in Unity. I recognize the default button like image background on like some really indie games, or maybe even just like some joke games. But then when it's like a proper AAA game, you don't know it's made in Unity. Like, the way I know if a game's made in Unity, I'll go into where it's like saved on my PC, and I know like the the file structure for like how a Unity project is. There's like an underscore data file or something. And whatever else, because I've been in there messing with things before. So I can usually be like, oh yeah, this is a Unity game pretty confidently.
A lot of people hide it if it's like a bigger title. Because you don't have that splash screen that everyone recognizes. But I think doesn't Genshin have the logo somewhere?
Maybe somewhere, but I haven't noticed it. And
I played it for like a few weeks.
Yeah, same.
And then I got bored with it.
I was like, I'm not
it
gonna.
It looks great.
Yeah.
Getting too grindy.
Yeah, saying that Unity is a bad engine is the same as saying that Blender's a terrible tool. That's kind of true. Like, I mean, obviously, is Maya's a paid software, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It keeps getting more expensive.
So obviously the difference.
So I only have the LT version, so the cheap version, but last year it was €35, and I just got a invoice saying, "Hey, it's 42 now.
Yeah.
Thanks."
I mean, it's not like the most expensive thing in the world compared to some software, but still, like, people at least used to look down on Blender a bit more. It's like, oh, it's free open source. It's obviously not going to be as good as the paid premium stuff.
Great.
But it's like,
I just can't use it.
But it's like, as someone who's approaching it who hasn't used any before, like, Blender's probably the best for getting into it fresh, because It's free.
Definitely.
It looks nicer in my opinion. There's more content for it. Yeah, more content. And it's only growing, and it's free and open source and public and all these good things. We have Elena in the chat, and also another donation from In and Out. Thanks again for the $5. What does Nathan think of Cyberpunk 2077 so far? I haven't played it. I've got a friend who's played it. And I've seen plenty of footage, and I've seen some pretty funny compilations on day one of memes and bugs and glitches, and it's like that's not good when you're having a bugs compilation on day one on YouTube. That's not a good thing.
Hi Elena.
Yeah.
Sorry, hi.
Yeah, I haven't played it, and I've heard from reviews and stuff. The story's great. The gameplay when it's not breaking is great, but when it is breaking, which is most of the time, it's not great. And the game was in development for a very, very long time. So people say how will it have any bugs? It's been made for that long. There should be no bugs, and people don't understand that there will be bugs. But at the same time, I do understand it shouldn't be that buggy, or they shouldn't have released it that buggy.
Something's gone wrong during development.
And people will say when you bring it out to a bigger audience, you find bugs you didn't previously find because bigger sample size. But at the same time, on day one, so many things were found that were occurring very, very frequently that you'd think if they even had just a sample size of 100 beta testers playing the game, it would crop up a couple of times, with the amount of people reporting certain issues, or just crashes on certain devices. Did they not test on those devices?
But they did. I mean, I have worked in QA for a year, and things will just get waived.
Waived as in you see them but you just ignore them.
Yeah, they'll be or put down in priority. I mean, of course, I don't know how CD Projekt Red works. I haven't worked there.
Yeah.
But QA will find things and report them, and then quite often just nothing happens with those reports.
Yeah, I feel like that probably happened maybe a bit too much.
Yeah.
I guess that's my thoughts on it. Just it's a shame that it does look like a good game, but people could have said they should have waited longer before releasing it. But I reckon even if they waited another half a year, it would probably have the same issues, maybe less of them. I don't know.
Yeah, someone's saying QA finds bugs, doesn't fix them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. QA will find most things, nearly everything. But yeah, then their part is done. Then it's got to be fixed by actual developers.
One time I made a really simple project, made a video on it, and then someone in the comments was like, "By the way, I broke your health bar," and I was like, "What?" And then I this is when I was quite new. I'd used a slider instead of an image fill for a health bar, so you could just click and just drag the health bar down. It wouldn't kill the it wouldn't kill the enemy because there's no way. It's not tied back to that, right? There's no callback saying, "Oh yeah, when the slider updates, set the health." It's the other way around. When the health updates, set the slider. But it's because I saw the slider as a really easy way to have a bar that fills up. I just delete the handle, or hit hide.
Correctable thing wasn't turned off.
Yeah, but even then, it's the slider's a bit too much just for a fill effect. You can just use an image and set the fill amount. But I wasn't aware of that at the time, so I was like, "Yeah, sliders for health bars, of course, it's easy, just fill it." And then someone's like, "Yeah, look, just drags the health bar down," and I'm like, "Oh, that's broken." Yeah.
That's pretty funny though. That's a funny funny bug.
The game, like Dane's saying there, a really interesting game idea where health bars are sliders. Imagine a horde of enemies coming at you, and you've got to quickly just click on each one and just drag all the health bars down as a hand-eye coordination game, that kind of thing. Obviously, it'd be pretty dumb if you could just go up to a boss and you drag its health bar down, it dies. There's not much depth there. How would you make the mechanic more interesting? I don't know, but
maybe if you slide the boss's health bar down, your health bar also slides down, so you can make it easier. But then if you get hit once, you die.
So you've still got to mix a bit of dealing damage, but also cheating using the mechanic, which is not cheating. Yeah.
That could be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be a bit weird. Or you healing enemies would give you a bonus effect to compensate for the fact you've restored some of the health. I don't know, it'd be pretty dumb, but you know, different types of health bars, left to right and up and down. Yeah, it'd become like a rhythm game or something then. Like you gotta quickly like click and drag and do the sliders. Like maybe this health bar's.
You gotta do everything at once while you're playing a game. You gotta.
Yeah, like multitasking with all that. Another game jam where bugs are required, health bars and sliders. Yeah, I mean, there's been so many game jams, right? Where like people have come with the idea before where the game has bugs and that's the theme. You could add
that's
checks.
Basically, Goat Simulator, isn't it?
Maybe Buzzwire, like health bar. Oh, where you've got to do it so accurately that like if your cursor goes out, you take damage back or something because you weren't accurate enough. Yeah, that is literally like making Osu or Os, you know, the rhythm game where you got to click and drag to the music and like follow the sliders and press the buttons. Or like he says, Dead by Daylight, like every so often you got to have skill checks where you got to like mash your spacebar key, or you've got to time well, not mash. Like you get
sounds very stressful.
You get something that comes up. You know, it's like in every game. It's like a golf game where you have the bar filling up and you've got to hit it at the right time. That kind of idea.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, we've gone on an aside there, and we've been going for we've pretty much gone for the full 2 hours now. So maybe we'll take one last question. I don't know if there were any outstanding questions that were left over. I think we might have got everything.
Someone saying, I love your tutorials, Joyce. Thanks for everything you share. I'm glad you like it. Thanks for the compliment, David.
Yeah, I guess we'll just do the outro now. We can mention, obviously, for those of you who are still here, Joyce's link to her Twitter is down below, and then from there you can probably find other things. And in I can't really point to it, can I? But like under Joyce's face, there is her YouTube thing, just MinionsArt. You'll go find it. What have you put on YouTube? Is it you actually put tutorials there? I have looked at some point. But...
So I'm not super active on YouTube. I'm actually in the middle of making a video now about this grass brush thing that I made. I don't know if you saw it. If you go to my Twitter, you can see it right there. This thing, I made a geometry grass shader. And I made a little tool that you can paint it, and like it'll paint mesh points, and that's what the geometry shader uses. So you can put down some points and it'll be a lot of grass there, and you can paint to remove the grass, and you can edit the grass, and it's a really nice little tool. That's free, of course. I'm making a video about how to use that and how it works and stuff. So that's coming up, God, I don't know, next week, I guess. Mick has linked everything. Yes. So yeah, there's my Twitter, my YouTube, my Patreon, and my Twitch.
Go check it all out. Go follow, subscribe, whatever the term is for each of the different platforms. Follow Patreon, become a patron. All those things.
You don't have to. Everything's free. Don't worry.
Go check it all out.
Check it all out.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for watching. We haven't actually yet got the confirmed guest for next week, so you'll just have to look out for that until we put another channel notification up. So we should be streaming the same day next week, maybe slightly different time, maybe the same time. So that's obviously Thursday at 6:30 or 6-ish UK time, so that's GMT. Usually go on for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. If you've got any more questions for me, then just tune in next time. If you've got any questions for Joyce, go find her. Go chase her down on social media.
I have a Discord too.
Go join the Discord.
If you go to Twitch, then there's a link to Discord if you want to join that. I'm always on there because I have no life. So if you want to ask me something, I'm there. Oh, and thanks for having me, Nathan.
No problem. Thanks for coming. Yep, I think everyone's just saying goodbye now. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And go check out Mick's video that will be going live any minute now when I shut down the stream on Arduino Electronics. Yeah, go check out his first video and give him support and feedback and like the video. All right.
Yes.
Bye.
Do that. Bye.